Good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of Uncle Brian's Consulting. I am your consultant, Uncle Brian, and today I'm going to touch on ownership, what it means, how it impacts your life. What motivated me to create a video like this was I've read a book by Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin called Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win. Very good read. If you want to learn anything about ownership and also leadership, you go to Jocko Willink's library of books that him and Leif have written over the years. Great book. You learn a lot from it. It's a very good book to have in your library. I keep all my books on a tablet, so I've got an e-library, so to speak. But great book. I'm going to get into it. I've got the book here on my tablet. I'm just going to read the foreword. It's going to give us a breakdown of extreme ownership, what it's about, how it applies, where it applies, and then we'll kind of discuss a little bit after that. So here we go from the book. Foreword. Of the many exceptional leaders we served alongside throughout our military careers, the consistent attribute that made them great was that they took absolute ownership, extreme ownership, not just of those things for which they were responsible, but for everything that impacted their mission. These leaders cast no blame, they made no excuses. Instead of complaining about challenges or setbacks, they developed solutions and solved problems. They leveraged assets, relationships, and resources to get the job done. Their own egos took a back seat to the mission and their troops. These leaders truly led. And that's coming from a military perspective, and now to bring it to more of a civilian type business setting. And don't get me wrong, ownership is great to have if you're a leader, but it's also much more important as an individual. I've held leadership billets in the military. I do it from time to time in my current job. I'm responsible for a lot of things. I haven't had a leadership title, but that does not mean I should carry ownership within myself. And before I even started this video, I was thinking, how are we going to break down ownership? Because the first thing you think about when you think about ownership is, for many people, it's ownership of personal property, like a home, a computer, the camera I'm using to make this video. Yeah, I own those things. I have ownership over those things. But more importantly, the ownership we're discussing today is what's inside here. And ownership is a great quality to have. It's important. It's how you carry yourself in everyday situations and scenarios. But more important, it's how people look at you as a natural leader. If you're one of those people that can't take responsibility for anything bad, but all of a sudden when something good comes up, oh yeah, that was me, that was my idea, it's mine, I did that. But if you can also sit there and say, when something doesn't go right, can you also raise your hand and say, you know what, I screwed up, that's on me, I own it, I can't blame anyone else but myself. They always say there's no such thing as bad teams but bad leaders. So going on through the book, in the years since we left active duty, we have worked with multitudes of business professionals, from senior executives to frontline managers across a vast range of industries, including finance, construction, manufacturing, technology, energy, retail, pharmaceutical, healthcare, and also military, police, fire departments, and emergency first responders. The most successful men and women we've seen in the civilian world practice this same breed of extreme ownership. Likewise, the most successful high-performance teams we've worked with demonstrate this mindset throughout their organizations. There you go. And then goes on to say, once people stop making excuses, stop blaming others, and take ownership of everything in their lives, they are compelled to take action to solve their problems. They are better leaders, better followers, more dependable and actively contributing team members, and more skilled in aggressively driving toward mission accomplishment. But they're also humble, able to keep their egos in check from damaging relationships and adversely impacting the mission of the team. Again, the key point that I'm taking away from this today, and as part of our discussion, is taking ownership of everything in your life. Like I said, this is not just a professional attribute, but it's also a personal attribute. For those of you that aren't familiar with Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin, they run a company called Echelon Front. It's pretty much a business leadership consultant firm that these two gentlemen have created and have very successful with it. And as we've mentioned before, they've worked with many different organizations within many different industries. So these two guys know what they're talking about. Their team knows what they're doing. So again, great book. If you haven't read it, read it. And it also goes on to say, taking ownership for mistakes and failures is hard, but doing so is key to learning, to developing solutions, and ultimately to victory. Those who successfully implement these principles run circles around the rest of the world. There you go. In my line of work, I'm a true believer that how people react, how people perform, is a direct reflection from the top down, meaning your top senior executive level leadership all the way down to the ground, the people on the boots on the ground people, how that organization is led, how people feel about their job, how they feel about the company, the organization, how they even feel about themselves, is a direct reflection from the top down. And let me see. It says the principles are simple but not easy. Taking ownership for mistakes and failures is hard, but doing so is key to learning, to developing solutions, and ultimately to victory. I've just read that. And I will say, it goes on to say that what we heard from readers who called the book, they call the book life-changing, the best leadership book I've ever read, and exactly what I needed to hear. And it's absolutely true. Since I've read this book, I have learned so much about ownership, about how I handle different situations. Granted, you can't control everything, and you're not supposed to. A lot of things are pretty much out of your hands, out of your realm. You can't control the weather, you can't control what other people are doing, but you can control what you're doing. As long as you take ownership of what you're doing, that's number one. Everything else will just fall into place. And like I said, this book is driven more towards leadership, but like I said, you could take most of everything in this book and apply it to your personal life, kind of, because you have to look at yourself in the mirror every day and decide, how am I going to impact the world today? How am I going to impact those around me today? What kind of role model can I be for the person to my left, person to my right, my coworkers, my kids, other family? What kind of role model do I want to be? What do I want people to take out of their interaction with me? I grew up, I'm a Gen X. I grew up, my parents are baby boomers. I grew up with a father that had very little ownership. I mean, he was one of these kinds of people. He can, instead of pointing the finger at himself, it went, his hands went, whoosh. Hey, what, why didn't you do this? Why do you behave like you do? Why do you drink so much? Instead of sitting there saying, well, it's a choice I made. It's more like, these are the reasons why, and then you start pointing to the other reasons. It could be your wife, it could be your kids, it could be your job, it could be other things that you really have no control over, but you should always have control of yourself. Take ownership of what you do. Why do you do the things you do? Because that's what I do. That's how I do things. That's who I am. I don't sit there and point the finger at this person or that person or whoever and say, well, it's their fault that I'm this way. If you're that way, maybe you need to take a look in the mirror and fix it. Grab a book like Taking Ownership You know, grab extreme ownership. Start reading. Get educated in ownership. You know, it's a good way to take control of your life. You know, all too many times, too many people let other people influence their lives instead of you doing it yourself. Instead of you deciding what you're going to do with yourself today, you let other people dictate what you're going to do. Hey, let's go to the local watering hole and drink till 2 or 3 in the morning. Oh, okay. Because I had nothing else going on. Why not? I'll go. Instead of saying, well, why would I want to do that? I mean, yeah, I'm down for a couple drinks, but I'm not going to sit out there. And it's not, for me, it's not what I choose to do. I mean, I know a lot of people do that stuff and they're fine with it. I've got bigger and better things I'd rather be doing. So I take ownership of myself, my life, and these are the things I want to do with it. I don't let anybody else influence my decision making. I don't let anybody dictate what I do, how I do it, where I do it, when I do it, who I do it with. It's all on me. And it's that thing that brings you more peace, quiet, and the peace, quiet, and freedom of your life is if you take charge of it, you manage it, you're your own leader, you know what you gotta do every day. Like, you go to work, you know what you're doing every day, you understand what needs to be done. Because trust me, you don't want to be that kind of person where somebody's always looking over your shoulder or observing you from a distance, making sure you're doing the right thing. That's something you should be doing on your own, and especially as a grown-ass adult, you should already have that ability to know what you got to do, know what you have to do today, what needs to be done. No one else is going to do it for you. You have to do it. No one else can. So, when I read this book, it was kind of an eye-opener for me because, like I said, I didn't grow up, in the ideal leave it to beaver household. I grew up, my dad was an alcoholic. My mom was born on a farm and ranch. Hardworking people, but at the same time, it was the information that we have now was never available then. So, that's one of the good things about the interwebs. You can find anything you want, learn anything you want, and ultimately guide your life in any direction you want. You can point your compass anywhere and the information is right there at your fingertips. This stuff wasn't available to me back in the 80s and 90s. It was, I wasn't into reading, wasn't into learning much, didn't give two shits. But now as an adult, it becomes more apparent and more important that you take responsibility for yourself, have extreme ownership, and that way you could solve your own problems and help possibly solve other people's problems. Because trust me, there are people out there that they don't have the ways and means to solve their own problems. They just don't. And so they look up to people like the few of us. They look up to people like us and say, hey, can you help me? Well, sure. What can I do for you? That's why I kind of started my YouTube channel in hopes to help other people get through the things in their life that are troubling them or having troubles getting out of. So that's why I say ownership is a great thing to have. If you don't have it, grab extreme ownership, read it, learn about the principles. He's got other books in here too that go along with leadership. Like I said, you don't have to look at it. Yeah, the other book here is the dichotomy of leadership. Like I said, you don't have to apply it in a work setting, but as long as you apply it in your personal life and it shows and people see that hey man, that guy's got his shit together. He's got his life figured out. He's in sole control of it. Just believe me, at one point or another, everybody has been on a rudderless ship, and that's kind of an uneasy feeling. And so to be able to get control of that wheel again and stay on course is a good feeling to have. So with that being said, that's all I'm going to cover on ownership today. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time. One more thing before I kind of end the video prematurely. I will put a link in the description for Extreme Ownership. It's on Amazon. It's $15 for Kindle. Hardcover is $14.49. Whatever you want to get, there's 4 or 5 different ways you can get this book in your hand. So I would advise reading it. But again, I'll have the link will be in the description box down below. So with that being said, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.